Imagine this. You're sitting across from someone you care about, someone you swear you love, someone you're convinced you understand, and yet something in you feels strangely absent. You smile, you nod, you say all the right words, but there's a hollowness under the surface, a quiet discomfort humming beneath your chest. You sense it the way you sense a storm approaching long before the clouds appear. Their voice is calm, but your pulse tightens. Their presence is familiar, but your mind feels far away. And you wonder, why does a person you love feel like a room you keep walking into without turning on the lights? Now imagine that, for a split second, your body reacts before you do. A subtle flinch, a flicker of irritation, a surge of fear that has no name. You don't know where it came from. You don't remember choosing it. You just know that it took over faster than you could speak. And when you finally notice what happened, the moment is already gone, replaced by that same practiced mask, the one you've worn for so long you sometimes forget it isn't actually you. What if the conversation you think you're having isn't the one happening at all? What if the real dialogue, the one deciding whether you grow close or drift apart, takes place in a layer of you that has nothing to do with your intentions? What if the part of you guiding your relationships is a version of yourself you've never even met? Your shadow doesn't ask for permission before it speaks. It doesn't step aside out of respect for your better intentions. It moves first, quietly, automatically, without hesitation. And while you keep wondering, why do my relationships always end up here? Your shadow whispers, because I'm the one steering. This is the part we rarely stop to question. You think you're choosing who to love, how to respond, what to forgive, what to fear. But what if most of these choices are echoes of old wounds repeating themselves? Patterns that didn't begin with this relationship at all, but replay themselves through every one you enter. Here's the unsettling truth. You can't build a genuinely conscious connection if the unconscious part of you is the one running the show. And once you realize that, the real question emerges. Not softly, but sharply, like a cold blade touching the skin. If your shadow is shaping your relationships, then who exactly is living your life? That's where the real story begins. You probably imagine your shadow as something monstrous, something shameful, something best left buried. But your shadow wasn't born out of malice. It was born out of protection. Every part of you that wasn't allowed to exist, your anger, your jealousy, your fear, your sadness, your desire to be chosen, your longing to be held, had to go somewhere. So you hid it. You pushed it down. You pretended it wasn't there. And in doing so, you taught your shadow how to survive without you. Carl Jung once said, "What we do not make conscious appears in our lives as fate." He wasn't being poetic, he was being literal. Whatever you refuse to look at will eventually shape your relationships more than the things you proudly claim as your personality. Think of all the moments you've said, "I'm just not that kind of person," or "I don't care," or "This doesn't bother me." The shadow hears those phrases as invitations. Something new for me to handle. But here's where things get complicated. Your shadow doesn't communicate in sentences or logic. It speaks through reaction, fast, impulsive, emotionally charged reaction. Here's how it takes over. You get close to someone and suddenly feel the urge to pull away, even though you want connection. Your partner says something harmless, but it echoes a childhood wound, and your whole body tenses before your mind catches up. Someone criticizes you, and instead of listening, you defend yourself with a level of force that surprises even you. You want to be loved, but you sabotage anyone who actually tries. You crave honesty, but you hide your truth the moment it becomes vulnerable. You long for intimacy, but you shut down the second someone gets too close. You hate conflict, so you bury it, only for it to resurface as resentment. These aren't random quirks. They're signatures, psychological fingerprints of a self you abandoned long before adulthood began. Jung called it the persona and the shadow. The persona is the version of you the world applauds. The shadow is the version of you the world punished. And every relationship you enter becomes a stage where these two selves begin fighting for control. Because the truth is, the people you love don't meet the real you until you've made peace with the parts you've been running from. The consequences creep in quietly. At first, you think you're just having an off day. Then you realize that everything feels off. You choose partners who feel familiar, not because they're right for you, but because they resemble the emotional atmosphere of your childhood. You repeat the same arguments with different people, always landing in the same emotional conclusion. Misunderstood, abandoned, attacked, unseen. You blame others for patterns that originated within you, but you've never had the language to articulate. One day you may look at your relationship and feel like you're watching the same movie you've seen 10 times. The cast changes, the script changes, the scenery changes, but the ending is always the same. And that's when you begin to suspect something deeper is at play. Your shadow isn't evil, but it is stubborn. It is loyal to your past, not your future. It protects you the way you protected yourself when you were young, through silence, withdrawal, anger, defensiveness, avoidance, or emotional numbness. You believe you're fighting your partner. You're actually fighting the parts of yourself you never learned how to hold. And the longer you avoid confronting your shadow, the more it convinces you that your pain is caused by everyone except the one person who's truly carrying it. You. At some point, there's a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when the rebellion begins. It doesn't start with a dramatic epiphany. It starts with a small realization. I can't keep living like this. Not in the sense of despair, but clarity. A gentle but powerful awareness that the patterns aren't random, that the pain isn't fate, that your relationships aren't cursed, they're communicating something. They're showing you where you've abandoned yourself. The rebellion begins when you stop blaming your partner for triggering you and start asking what the trigger is protecting. It begins when you catch yourself about to retreat emotionally and choose to stay present for 3 seconds longer than usual. It begins when you stop running and allow yourself to feel something you've avoided for years. Breaking the pattern isn't about fixing your partner. It's about meeting your shadow without flinching. That's what every conscious person in history has done, not because they were perfect, but because they realized the alternative was spiritual suffocation. Nietzsche wasn't exaggerating when he wrote that we must become who we truly are. He meant that the life you are meant to live cannot begin until the life you've been performing ends. Your shadow doesn't disappear when you confront it, but it stops steering your relationships. It stops speaking in your place. It stops choosing for you. And in that moment, for the first time in your life, you begin to understand what intimacy actually requires. Presence, honesty, vulnerability, courage. Not for others, for yourself. Eventually, the dust settles, the fear quiets, and a truth rises, not like a revelation, but like a memory you buried so deeply you forgot it belonged to you. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's the part of you that holds your unmet needs, your abandoned truths, your unlived life. It learned to fight for you long before you learned to speak for yourself. The final irony? The version of you that ruins relationships is the same version that was once protecting you from harm. And the moment you see this, not intellectually, but viscerally, is the moment everything changes. You stop seeing conflict as a threat and begin to see it as communication. You stop fearing vulnerability and begin recognizing it as the doorway to connection.
You stop trying to kill your shadow and start listening to it. Life doesn't become easier. It becomes real. And when the real you finally steps forward, the you that aches, laughs, longs, fears, desires, breaks, rebuilds, your relationships transform. Not because you found better people, but because you finally found yourself. There is no intimacy without self-confrontation, no relationship without self-honesty, no love without shadow work. And so the journey ends where it began, not in fear, but in clarity. Your shadow has been running your relationships. Now it's time to reclaim the wheel, not by becoming someone new, but by finally becoming someone whole.